about myself, man. I'm a native of Atlanta. My grandfather got here through Wetumpka, Alabama, to come to Atlanta to learn at Morehouse College. He was going to study medicine. During this time, he wound up in the print shop over the Atlanta Daily World. Atlanta Daily World was the first African-American run newspaper here in the city. Grandfather was a different kind of brother, a little radical to say the least. So during the civil rights movement, he kind of bounced, set up shop in my grandma's basement, and he started the Atlanta Inquirer first in 1960. Later on in 1966, he started the Atlanta Voice newspaper. His motto was, "A people without voice cannot be heard." So his intentions were to make sure that black folk all around the world had the opportunity to speak their truth, say it the way it needed to be said, print it the way it needed to be printed, read it the way it needed to be wrote. With that in line, a lot of things changed for my family in particular because of his efforts. And we'll get into that a little bit later. See, I'm a product of Atlanta Public Schools. And because of my grandfather, and because of Atlanta Public Schools, I have to tell you, I'm unapologetically black. Yes. Yes. All right. So let's get into the history of Atlanta just a little bit. Atlanta been lit. All right? Been lit. I'm talking about before the Harlem Renaissance, before the Great Migration, hell, even before the birth of hip hop, Atlanta was on fire. And to an extent, literally. Right? Not only is the weather hot, but Sherman came down here and burned it down. He destroyed the town. But it did a great thing for black Americans at that point in time. You see, free slaves knew they could come to Atlanta and they'd be protected by federal law. The other thing that it did was it displaced white merchants who were in this city already. Their lives were in shambles, everything was destroyed. The beauty in all of that is that in order to rebuild the city, everybody had to get together. So the resurgence of the city that they talk about proudly on the seal of our city, and when they talk about the Phoenix, is that collectively, African Americans or free slaves and the white merchants who lived here in Atlanta at that point in time had to band together to work together. That was the only way they were going to rise up and rebuild this city. Now, some interesting things happened because of that. And I'm not sure if all the intentionality behind it was cool, but you had white churches come to town and say, let's educate these African Americans. Let's give them skills so they can work hand in hand with us. Now, as we've progressed in this city, things have changed a lot. You know, kind of gotten away from working together, not only blacks and whites, but blacks together. We're not supporting each other the way we used to. We're not engaging each other the way we used to. I don't know if it's social media or just everybody chasing the check. But the bag, I would tell you, is when all of us work together, all right? Because to an extent we're missing the bag, we're complaining a lot. You see, everybody has something to say about the gentrification that's going on in the city, and everybody has something to say about the wealth gap. But nobody's taking accountability to the actions and things that they did and did not do to make sure that we were in position for these things to not happen. Oh boy, Lord Jesus. But one thing that I learned from my grandfather, which is really interesting in terms of how I grew up and why I am the way I am. So every day after school, I could remember probably from the time I was 7 or 8, my grandfather would pick me up from school and make me go to the paper. So I would have to work on the press, deliver the paper. Sometimes he'd just shoot me a couple of bucks to sit there and do my homework. And I learned a lot from that. And then when I got old enough to ride martyr by myself, that tradition continued. So I did that from, I'd say, 3rd, 4th grade all the way through high school. And he developed what I would call an interesting business program for me in particular. So one of the things that he had in place was an open door policy. meaning it didn't matter if his door was locked, it didn't matter who was in the room. I could open the door, walk in when I was younger, sit in his lap. When I was older, pull up a chair and listen to the conversation. Didn't matter if it was Nathaniel Brunner, Hosea Williams, Tyrone Brooks, Julian Bunn, Jesse Jackson. I met all those people in my grandfather's office. Spent more time with my grandfather in his office. And that's a powerful and impactful thing that I didn't understand until now. The reason I'm bringing it up is that I want you guys to think about that as you look at how you build your own legacy. So my legacy is a little different from my grandfather, however, in line with his spirit. So for me, my path was always entertainment and hospitality. Rick been known for throwing cut parties since cut parties existed. I got down with Jerome Rowe and Josh Birch back in the day. It developed into a couple of nightclubs, a couple of restaurants, things of that sort. But the intentionality was all the same. See, my grandfather thought that putting out a newspaper would give black folk the platform they need to make changes, tell the truth, like I said earlier. But for me, creating a space where black people could congregate, network, have positive conversation, or just have a good time, get the stress away, was gonna make a difference in the impact as well. So our spirits will align, just very different career choices and industries. But the essence of it was all the same to me. So where do we go from here? What does it look like for Atlanta? What does it look like for your legacy? As a father, I'm excited to see what my kids do. I can't wait for them to say, hey, thank you. I can't wait for them to say, hey, this is what I'm chosen to do with my life. This is the direction I'm going in. God willing, I'm in position to help them. You know, that's a serious honor and a serious responsibility as a father, to be in position, to lend a hand, to do what my grandfather did for me. My grandfather passed in 1991, but I'm standing on this stage only because of my grandfather. And we have to find ways for that cycle to continue. So how do we get there? Well, we get there specifically a couple of ways, and to me it's two. First and foremost, black folk got to do better. You got to do better. You have to be intentional about education. See, I believe that both Booker T. Washington and W.E. Du Bois, they were both right. I think every African American should have a skill or a trade that they can use to feed themselves. And those of us who are academically inclined should go to a higher learning institution and get a degree. And not only a degree, all the degrees that you're capable of getting. But that collective unit working together is going to make the biggest difference in our community. The other thing that we got to do, y'all, we got to get serious about financial literacy. All right? Understand the science of money and how to use money as a tool to make a difference in your life. Now, most black folk don't know that at all. But I'm gonna give you a cheat sheet because I think it works. Just be honest, especially at home with your kids. Show them your paycheck. Show them your bank account. Show them your bills. Real life education is the best way for them to at least start planting seeds in their brains that, hey, this is what money looks like. I got to preserve it. I got to protect it. I got to do something with it. They're not teaching it in school, so if they don't get it at home, they're going to get it the hard way, the way I got it, the way you got it. And that ain't right. The other thing we got to do, we have to be intentional about building black businesses. We're past the phase of our life where it's important for you to get a good education and get a good job. We will not succeed as a people if we do not build businesses employ people that look like us, and encourage those that work for us to do the same thing. We have to build black businesses. The other thing we have to do, we have to be intentional about the legacy that we leave. And what I mean by that is do the small things that will make a difference in the generation after you. Buy real estate, buy life insurance, and God damn, write a will. The worst thing in the world is for your family to fight over pennies when you die. Fix that problem. And don't leave us in a position where we're scrambling to raise money to bury you and pay off your debt. It just ain't right, and it just ain't fair. So moving forward, we got to do better. I want to share a little story with you guys. Last summer, somewhere in there, no, maybe last fall or so, I had this hoodie on called Old Atlanta. And I was hanging out in this restaurant that Tip say we can't eat at no more. And we don't now, but it was cool then, right? And I walked by this lady who had to be a seasoned white lady, probably around 70 years old. And she stopped me, and she said, young man, what does Old Atlanta mean? Why you got that on your shirt? So I stick my chest out, because I'm proud to wear this shirt, and I go to her and I say, hey, I'm a native of Atlanta. I grew up in Atlanta. I never lived outside 285. So to me, this shirt just honors my life and the way I grew up in this city called Atlanta. It's Old Atlanta, it's the way I know it. It's a viewpoint from a native. And she said, oh, really? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, well, that makes me Old Atlanta, too. And I was like, say, what? Where'd you grow up, Miss Lady? And she begins to tell me. Blew my mind. She said, I grew up on Bankhead Highway. And I graduated from West Fulton High School. Woo. And in that moment, I realized that for the last 50 years, we have lived in the hood. We have built culture in the hood. We have gone all around the world making money off the culture that we have built in the hood. But we forgot to buy the block and develop it. So what are we going to do now? Well, it is what it is at this point. And now they're throwing new catchphrases out here. Inclusion, diversity, New Atlanta. Well, hey. So to my white friends, y'all got to be better. Respect the culture. And be intentional about how you embrace our neighborhoods and you come into neighborhoods. Because reparations for African Americans are dead and gone. They're not going to give us our 40 acres and a mule. They keep building high rises. Ain't nowhere to stick it. So I'm asking for access. I'm asking for access to capital, because I think it's important that you diversify those funds and you invest in black businesses. You diversify those funds and you invest in education. You diversify those funds that you have and you invest in affordable housing for African Americans. And you keep the culture in the neighborhood. The other thing I'm asking for is network. We need a seat at every table that you are building. And the way you remember that is when you sit down and have these meetings and you planning and developing what you're going to do in this city, if there's no people of color sitting at the table, you ain't got no culture. So without culture at your table, you're making Atlanta stale, It ain't gonna be what it has been, and it's not gonna be what it's supposed to be. Fix that right now, today. So I leave you guys with this. I just brought all of that up because I wanted to create a platform for that conversation to happen. I wanted to open up the lines of communication so things can change in this city. I want Atlanta to be at its best, and we have to work together. Black folk have to get together and do what we need to do, and black folk and white folk for sure got to get together and make it happen for this city. I'm Richard Dunn. It was a pleasure speaking with you today.
Who am I? I'm the one that can walk barefoot on Bankhead because I know I ain't never got to run. Savvy enough to stand on 50.